Welcome to the Essence of the Soul,
a safe haven for all souls.
My name is Linda.
And my name is Paris, and welcome to Holistic Practices to Elevate Your Spiritual Journey.
Today we're going to be talking about spiritual practices. So what are spiritual practices? This is something I've kind of had a little bit of confusion myself during my spiritual journey of what exactly it is. But essentially, spiritual practices are intentional, specific activities or actions that help cultivate and deepen our spirituality. It allows us to discover our deepest selves and connecting us to the divine, strengthening our journey to oneness. It guides us in engaging with our inner selves and expanding our spirituality. These practices in return influence how we live our lives. Essentially, we become what we practice. They don't need to be complex. They can be as simple as you'd like or as complex as you'd like. A lot of spiritual practices can be simple, but some examples we can go through will kind of show you some spiritual practices that we do for ourselves.
Yeah, so we're going to go over a few examples that we really liked. And the first word is devotion. I think that word is so deep. When I hear it, I'm like, it's very similar to like the discipline commitment, right? And it's very interesting because with devotion as an affirmation, right, we can implement certain practices to achieve devotion. So one of the first things that I was thinking about was exercise and movement, right?
Yeah.
To heal our mind, body, and spirit. But for us as a vessel here, we have to heal our bodies and we have to nurture it and make sure that we're getting the exercise that we need every single day in order to achieve, a healthy vessel. So one thing about me is that, I work all day long. I go to school all night long. So a lot of times I don't get a lot of the exercise that, I hope to have. And I had a lot more of that time in the summertime. But right now I have been struggling a lot with that. So I think, but I will say for the past year or so, maybe 2 years now, I have been going through a very deep journey of my exercise life, my fitness life, and making sure that I'm very disciplined, committed, and having devotion to it because I know the end goal that I want, right?
Yeah.
So I think with that, and I have gone through a whole transformation myself, but I have always felt the need to do that because in order for me to have a healthy vessel, it also helps my spirit and also helps my mind as well. So I know that I feel good and that I look good and that I am very confident in myself, right? So I think when it comes to devotion, there's certain things that, you can kind of be hard on yourself on this journey. And the same thing goes for another practice, which is the meditation, mindfulness, or breath work, right? Because in those types of practices with meditation is also something where I'm like, I have to be very disciplined. I want to do it every single day, at least for 20 minutes, minimum, because they say if you do 20-minute meditations, it'll literally change the rest of your day pretty much. So if you could take 20 minutes out of your 24-hour day just to do that, it will change a lot, especially in your mind, your brain waves, every single thing.
Mind, body, and spirit.
Yes. And I think with that, it does take a lot of devotion and commitment because you really need to be disciplined in knowing that I'm not just taking care of my body, but I'm also taking care of my mind and every single thing that's going through it, whether, I work an 8-hour shift all day or, I go to school and I literally can barely take all this information in, you know what I mean? There's a lot of interaction there where, as humans, we literally live a super busy, routine type of life every single day where we have jobs to do and we don't have time, or we feel that we don't have time to focus on ourselves. But at the same time, what else is more important than taking care of our health,
your well-being?
Yeah.
And it's also really important to take note that spiritual practices shouldn't be seen as just a to-do list to cross off each and every day. You can see it as like a foundational path for you to walk on your journey, because essentially what you want is to become that practice. What is it that you're practicing? You're practicing devotion, then you become devoted by doing those actions.
Yeah.
And when do you become devoted is by being disciplined and having that commitment to bring yourself to the gym, or, some people even use yoga as a form of exercise. When you get on that mat, you having the intention of being devoted to your health, your well-being, and your mind, body, and soul.
Or even if, you do have, like, let's say you do go to school, right? Like, discipline and devotion to the things that you're learning, right?
Yes.
So it's always good to be purposeful in the work that you do in the real world, whether that's in your professional career or even in your education, because in those moments you want to understand, why am I doing this? Why am I devoting my life to this, right? Why am I becoming this? And you want to know that eventually there will be something in the end that is not just going to impact you, but other people as well. So that's very important.
Yes, and I love that, because when you're being devoted, you're not just doing that action, you're practicing by doing that action of becoming devoted, but you're also taking that practice to become a devoted person in life in general. Now I become a devoted person to my passions. I become a devoted person to the people I love. Another example we can use is compassion. So, being a compassionate person, how do you practice that? You can practice that by starting with yourself through prayer. So when you have prayer, you're praying and having gratitude. And when you have gratitude, you have compassion for the things that are around you. Just as simple as breathing, being able to breathe, being compassionate of yourself, and loving your body and your mind for what it can do for you.
Yeah, for sure. And this word has been resonating with me so much, because the things that I've been going through, like, maybe you guys can kind of resonate with this too, but I have been going through so much like weird self-sabotage, where I'm like, why am I being so mean to myself? You know what I mean? Or so hard on myself to the point where I'm like, okay, like, even though I'm not doing everything perfect the way that I feel, that I think, the truth is perfection is non-existent, you know what I mean? And you can't think that way. So for me, I had to change my perspective, my mind, and start saying, I need to be more compassionate with myself. And I think compassion goes such a long way. And a lot of times, like, the biggest thing for me is understanding, where is my spirit at in this moment, right? Because why am I being so hard on myself, or why am I self-sabotaging myself, right? And a lot of times I realize it's because it's like you hear certain whispers in your ears, or certain things in your ears that want you to, like, feel down, right? It's like it wants you to eat yourself up and to just, like, hurt yourself, in ways that, is just not, it's not right, you know what I mean? So I realized that compassion goes such a long way, and it's not just towards others, but towards yourself. Same thing, devotion to yourself, the same way you would have devotion to others, right?
Yes.
And it's so important because, like you mentioned, with prayer and gratitude, as well as, even simply lighting a candle.
Yes.
I had like this interesting thing happened to me. I don't even think I've told you this yet, but I have been dreaming so much about being like at this certain house, at a certain place where I'm like, why do I keep dreaming about being there every single night? Like every day I'm like, I'm still there. It's like, I'm not dreaming about anything else, right? So I had like these dreams of like, okay, I'm still over there, I'm not where I am right now. And it didn't really scare me or shock me or anything, but once like everything started connecting to me, like, okay, the self-sabotage and like being so hard, being so stressed, right, from school, from work, like there's a workload that I've been giving myself a lot this season of my life, I guess. And it's so interesting because with like the downloads that I get, I had a download one day that came to me and said, light a candle and pray. And I was like, about what? I literally was like, I don't know what to pray about. And like, mind you, like I'm doing this and like literally my room's a mess. And I always say like, if my room is a mess, like I'm usually a mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. So I literally cleaned my room, did everything, and I was like, okay, like I should listen and like, do this thing. So I had actually asked, like, like what do I pray about? Like, what do I pray for, And they told me to pray for myself and to pray for the world, right? And so in that moment, I was like, okay, because I know the world's going through a lot too, but at the same time, I'm also going through a lot. And, I was like, okay. And literally they just said, light a candle and pray, light a candle and pray. And I'm like, okay, I should just do this. So when I lit the candle and I had prayed and I prayed for myself, and I didn't realize how emotional that made me, right? Because that's when you start to realize, like, hey, I really love myself.
Yes.
I love myself and I have compassion for myself. And, for me, I was like, the connection to the dreams was that I felt like my spirit was detached almost, like it was floating around or it was not home with me.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, I had to ask, like, I had to connect everything. Like, it took a while for me to like really connect everything at once. But I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe that's the reason, and I was like, oh, like, okay, like, come home back to me and like be, with me, I love you. Like, you are amazing, like saying all these things, like you have an amazing like life, amazing family, like and at the same time praying and saying like, I'm grateful for every experience. I'm grateful for every person. I'm grateful for every single thing that has been given to me.
Yes.
And that's what gratitude is, right? It's like literally being grateful that I can breathe, grateful that I have food, grateful that I have a home. Those are ways to show yourself self-compassion too. And when you do the opposite, which is the sabotage, right? It puts your mind, body, and spirit into a lower vibration where your vessel feels super weak too. So you can't even, like, you feel so stuck, you feel lost. And
That's essentially what your dream was telling you.
Yes.
You were stuck in that home.
Yes. And I was like, it was so funny because I was like, oh my God, all the dots that were connecting. I literally looked into the mirror and, I was stressed out from school, whatever. But I was like, oh my God, like, oh, I just feel so lost. But I didn't realize, because what I was thinking was like, I feel lost because like I'm lost about this homework. I'm lost about like, like I haven't gone to the gym or like whatever it was, you know what I mean? Like certain practices that I wasn't doing, like I haven't been meditating, like whatever it was. And then you start to become so hard on yourself. You self-sabotage yourself, and then you lower your vibration. You become this vibration where it's easier for these forces to come at you, to darken you.
Exactly.
Yes, and to put you in a very blocked state where your chakras are blocked, you are blocked, you feel blocked from your spirit guides, you feel blocked from connection to source. There's so much that goes into it. And that's why I'm like, compassion, that word is so, so important, guys. Like, make sure that, you are doing prayers for yourself, for other people, have gratitude. And like I said, self-compassion goes a long way, the same exact way that self-sabotage does. So it goes both ways. So just make sure that you're being intentional with that too.
Exactly. And that's kind of where mindfulness comes from, where you're being aware of the negative self-talk that you're feeding yourself.
Yeah.
With those intrusive thoughts, even if it's just like a simple thing as like, oh my gosh, I did that so bad. Or like, oh my gosh, my life is a mess. Or, like when you speak those words to yourself or even think about those words, you become that.
Exactly.
And that's why it's so important to be mindful of, your actions, your thoughts, and what you say in your words. And, that's where you grow and you heal those parts of yourselves.
Exactly.
Going into self-awareness too, a thing that you can practice or like an activity is journaling. So if you journal, like kind of like your journey too on your spiritual journey, you go back and look, you realize, oh wow, like I didn't realize I was actually in such a dark place in my life. I go back and read some of the things I wrote back then. I'm like, wow, like I was very wounded, and I look back and I'm like, that part of me needed compassion, being kind to myself. And that's the practice that I am continuously doing on a daily basis through self-reflection as well. Practicing when I am getting, these lower vibrational thoughts or feelings within myself, and trying to understand where it's coming from, the source, and learning how to become better, how to not have those thoughts anymore, how to like, have more positive thoughts, have more positive outlooks on life and a perspective. And part of like being able to do this too, like that self-awareness comes with solitude. Solitude is one thing that I'm still practicing. If you know a little bit about me, like I never liked being in solitude. I was always a person where I like to go out. I like to surround myself with others because that's what uplifted me. That's what allowed me to kind of forget about all of the negative things in my life, all the chaos, all of the drama or anything I'm going through at that time. And solitude is one thing that, a lot of people should embrace because if you look at it on the negative perspective, it could be seen as loneliness. But if you see it from a positive outlook, it's solitude, where you're feeding your mind, body, and soul. You're allowing yourself to separate from other people's energies to truly tap into your own energy and your own soul to see where you are at in your journey. And when you do notice those things, it's easier to find ways to improve upon them.
That's very true. And I love solitude. I think that's so important, especially when you are on a spiritual journey like this, or just any journey, that you're on. It's very important to understand how to be alone so that and you can understand your own self-awareness of the self as well as the people around you. Another thing with self-awareness, I love this whole self-awareness type of word, because I think that's like one of my number one things, especially becoming older, getting into your adulthood, is like you really have to be self-aware in every single situation, every single thing, right? Because at the end of the day, like you have to take care of you, right? And it's actually interesting because with my self-awareness, I really had to know non-self-awareness in order to understand what self-awareness is and how to obtain it. Because a lot of people will ask, like,
how do you be self-aware?
Which is such a interesting question. When people ask you that, it's like, how do I even answer that? But at the same time, it does take a lot of practice and it does take a lot of discipline, right? Same thing. It all connects, like devotion, compassion to self-awareness. Like you have to have all of those things. You have to have like this discipline to yourself where it's like you're not engaging in certain activities or things that are gonna lower your vibration, right?
Exactly.
Same thing with like the compassion, right? Like you don't have love for yourself, you don't trust yourself, you don't have compassion for yourself. How are you gonna be self-aware?
How are you going to love others when you don't know how to love yourself?
Exactly. So you can't really, like, it's like each of these practices, you have to like build off of one another. You know what I mean? Because it's like with self-awareness is such a big thing, especially if you're not just trying to be self-aware of your current surroundings, right? And your community and the people around you as well as yourself, but the world, right? The worldview, the things on the news, the things that are being said, certain things that are happening that are not affecting you, but are happening out in the world, right?
Yes.
So those are like different ways to like understand self-awareness, or at the same time to practice self-awareness is to actually really learn how to give yourself that love, right? To give yourself the trust that you need. And then also to discipline yourself so that you're not overdoing certain limitations, right? Like you need to get over like certain temptations, certain addictions, right? Because sometimes like if you don't do that, like at the same time, it's harder to like, or it's easier to lose your self-awareness and your consciousness. And another thing actually, which is a little bit separate, but one thing about me that I've noticed, so this is me being self-aware, is that a lot of times I am not self-aware of my stress. Like I seem to not really understand what stress is. You know what I mean?
Because it's become a norm.
Yes.
Where you're so used to working under high stress that it becomes normal to be chaotic, to be a mess, to be, it's become who you are. And that's why we say, think of these spiritual practices as a foundation to become what you practice.
Yeah.
You want to become more devoted. You want to be more organized. You need to work from within.
Yeah.
It's like that saying that goes, as within, so without.
Right. And that's the whole thing is like, I think with the whole stress, like, and it's funny too, because I have like one-on-one meetings with my manager, and I'm like, oh yeah, like, she's super sweet. And, I think when I have this, it's almost like a therapy session. It feels like, well, I feel like, you know, this week has been good, but I didn't realize until the end of the week that I'm actually super stressed out about X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? But the thing about me is like, I'm really good at hiding it too. So it's like, even if I was super stressed and even if I did say it, a lot of people wouldn't be able to recognize it
Yeah.
either or see it because of how well you can handle stress to the point
Exactly.
where it's like, you're just numb to it, like you said, like you're used to it,
Yes.
it becomes your norm. And I think that's where I had to shift my mindset in this season of my life too, of course, where I'm like, okay, now I need to be self-aware and I need to take a step back and I need to like set boundaries, and I also need to like just work on, other things that might be more beneficial to me for my health, just for, a good amount of time where I'm also, getting my work done as well. So it's so hard to balance. And guys, we are in the season of Libra right now, so it's very important to understand balance, like the workload and the fun, right?
Yes.
And also take care of ourselves as well. So Libra season teaches me a lot. I'll tell you guys that.
Yeah, about being balanced. I think that's really important. I think like the self-awareness part is the most important thing for learning how to balance too, because if you're not even aware of what is imbalanced in your life, how can you learn how to balance it, right?
Yeah.
Of course, everything in moderation is okay, but I think one thing for me is when I realize I'm too stressed, I start to, become a mess. Like, I'm late to a lot of things. It shows up through my physical body too. I think that's one thing. Self-awareness is everything is connected, your mind, body, and your soul. So when I'm not doing my best physically, it shows through, when I'm not doing my best mentally, it shows through me physically, like through acne breaking out or back pain, even like a body pain, aches. And that will be another episode we'll go into. But it's really interesting the more you become self-aware of yourself and your other people around you and your environment as well.
Yeah, for sure.
A little thing that we wanted to go into is being purposeful, having intention. So that's another way of being self-aware is like the daily actions that you take. What are the intentions behind it and how is it purposeful in your daily life, right? Because we want to live a life full of purpose. We always ask ourselves on our journey, what is my purpose? And sometimes your purpose can be as simple as being a caring, compassionate individual, loving and showing love for one another through your daily actions. Your purpose is not just one big thing that you strive for. Your purpose is the little tiny things that you do on a daily basis, such as maybe being a listening ear for a friend that is going through a lot, or even as simple as holding the door for someone who is not capable of opening it themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are all ways that you can incorporate spiritual practices too. As long as you make it spiritual, it is spiritual. It's all about your perspective.
It is. And I think even in this physical world too, right, with your professional careers or I guess just any shift in your life, any type of thing or function, right, family function, thing that you're doing for people, I think always be purposeful, like every single thing, you have to have intention. You have to have good intention for those around you, for yourself, and the everyday work that you do, right? So when you go into like a career field or certain things that, you're like, oh, I'm working really hard because I want to be able to impact this amount of people, you know what I mean? Or I'm doing this work because I'm helping this person for this amount of reasons, you know what I mean? And with any type of job, of course, you're always helping something. And I think the biggest thing I've realized is to be purposeful is to really know exactly what you're doing it for and to also understand if it makes you happy,
Exactly. Because like purpose is felt from within. When you feel like you're being of service to others, that's when you are living your purpose. You're being purposeful towards others, the world, and yourself. I like this a lot, purpose, because I haven't shared this too much with a lot of people, but in the previous episodes when we first started, I was in the IT field, and that's kind of like a place where I went into to kind of, make my parents proud, make the people around me proud. But one thing that it didn't give me was purpose.
Yeah.
it didn't give me purpose. It didn't give me like happiness, and that's something I craved for. As I continued my spiritual journey, and I found more of myself and what I valued, and shifting that mindset to a more purposeful mindset, I actually ended up quitting my job in corporate so that I can pursue something that will make me feel of service to humanity, feel of service to the people that are in need, of help, the people that are suffering. And I think that kind of goes in with like my Cancer rising too. I think one thing that's really important is whatever you do, if it's not being of service to you, it's not being of service to others. And it's important to remember that so that we can live a purposeful life.
Yeah, for sure. And I will always preach that to anybody, you know what I mean? But at the same time, we do live in this third dimensional world as well. And whatever you do, like I said, you can always find purpose. And in every single job, you're always helping or impacting something, So just know that these are just certain ways that you can practice your spirituality elevated and pretty much use these holistic tools in order to create a foundation for yourself every single day. So practice makes perfect, and you can really get to where you want to be as long as you have consistency as well. That's another practice.
Exactly. Devotion, commitment. And it's important to be kind to yourself. Perfectionism is not the goal. It's to become what you practice. And once you've become that is ideally perfectionism.
Yeah.
Not indirectly. Yeah.
Practice what you preach,
Exactly.
If it's like healthy eating, you know what I mean? Like you gotta really practice that in order to really preach that as well. So,
Exactly. And we're humans at the end of the day. We're not going to ever be perfect, but continue practicing and become what it is that you want to practice.
Yeah.
Like we said, gratitude, compassion, whatever it is you want to become, practice that with those specific actions or activities that help you gain that. And just continue to evolve and grow as a spiritual being.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.